What's up, guys? Welcome to the dojo. So, sometimes I feel like a real outcast in the Final Fantasy community because although I have this burning, undying love for Final Fantasy, I don't relate to the community at large pretty much at all because it is constant, constant turmoil. And today I decided that I figured I would go over some of the history of this turmoil, especially the worst cases. Now, of course, there's always been certain things here and there, like the retconning that the community had when they decided they all of a sudden loved Final Fantasy 12. And I remember very clearly everyone hating Final Fantasy 12 when it came out. But nonetheless, yesterday I made a video about the Final Fantasy 16 trailer, and it was mostly in good spirits. It was sarcastic. I wanted to make it a little funny, and I didn't know that people were very serious about Final Fantasy 16, them not liking it, because for me, I'm just excited there's a new Final Fantasy game coming out, and they finally decided to announce it. Like, yeah, do I think it's going to come out anytime in the next 2 years? No, I don't believe that at all. But I'm excited there's a new Final Fantasy game announced nonetheless because I'm a fan of the series, but people on Twitter are blowing up saying it looks generic and boring, and, well, I decided today that we're going to go back to the beginning, where I believe all of this turmoil and all this passionate hate came from. To understand this, we have to go back to E3 2005, May 16th. Sony's showing off the PS3 for the first time. And what does Square Enix decide to do? This would be the worst mistake of their entire existence. And I mean the worst, ladies and gentlemen. They have made a ton of mistakes. Square Enix decided to show off a small tech demo for the game Final Fantasy VII running on PS3. Now, to the fans' credit, we all thought this was real because they were showing the PS3 off. It was this new hardware. They were showing off these amazing trailers. So, Final Fantasy VII being the most beloved game in Square's history, why would they show off a trailer for this game and make it just a tech demo? You know, it was a serious problem. But for the next 10 years, whenever Square Enix would announce anything, it was, where's the Final Fantasy VII remake? In every single one of their comments, and I'm talking, guys, hundreds of comments of people begging for the Final Fantasy VII remake. And they were not going to give up. I mean, I thought, sometime around 2011, 2012, maybe they would eventually lighten up and be like, we're never getting it. Because Square Enix said over and over and over and over again they were never going to release the Final Fantasy VII remake. It was too much work. They didn't want to do it. But then, like an anime superhero coming back to fulfill the needs of the people, in 2015 they announced the Final Fantasy VII remake officially. And this whole project was a mess. The director, Tetsuya Nomura, didn't even know he was on the game until he saw the trailer and he saw his name in the trailer. That's how much of a mess Square Enix is. Anyway, the fans were elated, everyone was pleased, everyone was happy, and their favorite game was back. But like ravenous zombies who have an unsatiable hunger for dread and misery, this would not last very long because for the next few years we would see trailer after trailer of Final Fantasy VII Remake, and there was one important character missing. That would be one of the favorites, Tifa Lockhart. And you have to understand that Tifa is probably the second most popular character in that entire game next to Cloud, and they just had not shown her off, and it had been years at this point. But on on E3 2019, this is June 11th, at the Square Enix press conference, they finally show her off, and the crowd erupts in cheer. Once again, Square Enix has released a happiness grenade on the crowd, and everyone's elated for about 20 seconds because we were about to enter one of the worst gaming wars in history. You think the console wars were bad? No, 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 my friends. No. We're talking about the Tifa breast wars. So, when they showed off Tifa and her outfit, people were happy, like I said, but then the internet took over and they said, wait a second, that's not the Tifa I'm familiar with. The Tifa I'm familiar with has double F cups on her chest, like basketballs hanging down. Because people didn't understand that Tifa was a cartoon character when they were drawing her, and she was extremely stylized back in 1997. Even though the new Tifa looked awesome, it was not sufficient for the big boob Tifa crowd, and they went haywire on Twitter, in the comment sections of Square Enix, and then it turned into a giant fight back and forth with gaming journalists writing giant articles about it, and other gaming journalists online apparently crying in their closet because they have had small boobs their whole life. I don't know. It was a really weird situation. But once people started accepting this, and once people started allowing the new Tifa to exist in their mind and being like, okay, well, actually, she looks pretty okay. There were still a couple stragglers here and there, but generally the crowd changed, and we were all just happy once again. Hey, Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming. But the peace would not last long, for we were only in the eye of a hurricane, because the shipping wars were about to begin. And up until this point, the Tifa breast wars were the worst war we've seen in history, but the shipping wars were a whole nother level. It was like watching the Revolutionary War turn into World War II. The shipping wars hadn't begun quite yet, but they were starting. People were starting to, post pictures of, Cloud and Aerith or Cloud and Tifa. But on April 10th in 2020, the Final Fantasy VII Remake officially came out. And for the most part, everyone was elated once again. And then the ending hit. And there was several people that spoiled the ending ahead of time, because apparently the whole game got spoiled ahead of time. And people were mad about the ending, how it wasn't exactly the same. Other people were happy about the ending, how it was sort of technically a sequel, not exactly a whole remake. But the game kind of ends in the same place no matter where you look at it, so it didn't really matter. That wasn't the biggest problem, because overall the Final Fantasy VII Remake was quite well received by the audience, and people generally like it. They thought the combat was fun, and the story was good, and the characters were extremely likable, and the Midgar realization was large and impressive, and it was extremely detailed, and you could finally explore it to its full capacity. But the problem was that once people got their hands on Final Fantasy VII Remake and saw the story, the shipping wars went into full action. And I mean, this was a bloody, brutal battle that is continuing in some capacity today, with people being driven off Twitter, people threatening suicide, artists making renditions of Cloud and a girl in the game, and other people freaking out and driving him off Twitter, and it has been a complete nightmare in the Final Fantasy VII community ever since. And it's just gotten weirder and weirder because people haven't let it go. It hasn't slowed down, and it's just, if you go on Twitter and look up Final Fantasy VII Remake, it's pretty cringy. Like there's a massive amount of cringe, because whenever someone posts like, oh, I think Cloud and Tifa are really cool together, and all of a sudden, like the swarm of Aerith fans jump on them. This isn't new, shipping fandoms is extremely popular in like anime and whatnot, but this was a whole other level. Like the gaming community wasn't prepared for this, I don't think. And Square Enix didn't do themselves any favors, by the way, by putting Cloud in all these situations in the game with the girls, but that's a story for another time. So the shipping wars have gone on for the better part of 2020, and then yesterday, September 16th, 2020, they released the Final Fantasy 16 trailer, which, as I state in my trailer breakdown, I don't think is a real game yet. I'm pretty sure that's just a concept trailer. But I didn't expect the amount of hate that was gonna spew from the internet over this thing, because sure, like there was, people were like, oh my god, Final Fantasy 16 got leaked, and they were happy, and then they saw the trailer and they're like, this looks extremely boring. This looks like Square Enix is trying to appease to the Western audience. This isn't the Final Fantasy that I knew. And they're completely wrong. because the Final Fantasy they know is only Final Fantasy 6 and up. You know, Final Fantasy looked a lot like this pre Final Fantasy 6. I mean, this was the high fantasy um, plot and story that the series was built off of. So when I see this, and from an outside perspective, as a man who just loves all things Final Fantasy, I have to say the Final Fantasy community is completely batshit crazy because it's like a roller coaster. They're happy about something, and then when it doesn't meet their exact expectations, they plummet. You know, they were like ravenous dogs attacking Square Enix when they were showing off anything about Final Fantasy VII. They didn't want any changes. You know, whether what is it the I don't like this battle system. I want the classic battle system, or you know the action time combat guys going after the turn-based guys, and it was just it's been a nightmare, and it's constant turmoil, and it's a fandom that I just don't really relate to at all. You know, I buy my Final Fantasy merchandise and I have my shelves, and I just I play all the games, and I'm probably gonna play every Final Fantasy game on my stream. You know, before Final Fantasy 16 comes out, and just be happy about it. But there is people that just absolutely go crazy over Final Fantasy 7 over on the internet, and it's a little scary sometimes. You know, and this isn't to say that there isn't legitimate criticism lashed out towards the game. I think that the criticism that like, hey, maybe these characters look a little generic is like fine, but there's a difference between criticism and like straight up attack mode, which is a thing that Twitter is pretty much known for. There's no like middle ground. There's no moderation on Twitter. It's always straight up anger. Hopefully, Square Enix shows a little bit more off of Final Fantasy 16, or maybe they go away in the distance. I just want like the fandom to be able to cool off for a little while until we see something a little more in depth of Final Fantasy 16. And Square Enix, please, for the love of God, if you are not making significant progress on Final Fantasy 16, don't show us a trailer every year. We get it. We know it's coming out. We know it's going to take a while. But until you have significant progress on the game made and you have it within a year or two, no, 1 year. If you have it within 1 year of being completed, then you can show us more trailer, more gameplay. The reveal was fine. Go work on it. Because if you continue to show people little bits of information, they're going to be able to pick it apart, show off what you have at the finale, and within a year's time, release the game. That's all we need. That's all you have to do. You don't need to announce games 5 years in advance. I think every single one of us that are fans of Square Enix would appreciate that. But that's it. See ya.